Ah, what a beautiful day. Hey, everybody, it's Mr. Lin. It's quarantine day 8. It's a beautiful Saturday, so I'm sitting out here on my front porch doing my uh, recording and editing for today. So I'm real excited for today's video. A lot of my students will know that I make you sing a lot, and I don't really emphasize the quality of your singing, but I do think it's important that every instrumentalist sings. When you sing, it develops your ear, it develops your listening, and it develops your inner pitch. And a lot of professional educators will say if you can't sing it, you can't properly play it. So, with that in mind, I decided to contact an old friend of mine. This is Katie Laurie. Katie and I went to college together at Moravian. And aside from having her degree from Moravian College, she was an adjunct voice professor at NYU while she earned her master's degree in vocal performance and an advanced certificate in vocal pedagogy. That's the fancy word for the study of teaching. Uh, she's taking she's taken an extra study in speech, music, neuroscience, and arts management. She originated roles in internationally acclaimed off-Broadway immersive productions, for which she was featured in The Gothamist, Crane's New York Business, Time Out New York, The New York Times, and immortalized as an original sci-fi comic book character. She's been a circus aerialist. She studied magic with Teller from Penn and Teller. She's given a TEDx speech on the necessity of singing, which she'll mention. Um, and she's helped hundreds of people find their authentic voices. She's a good friend of mine, and I thought, especially with her background in music theater, that a lot of you would really enjoy hearing what she has to say. So, all instrumentalists should be singing. Uh, Obviously, all singers should be singing. And you should hear what my friend has to say. And there might be a little extra visit at the end. So make sure to watch to the end. So
All
I
right,
am
that's
here
it.
with my good friend Katie,
Mm-hmm.
and we are talking about singing. Katie is an expert on singing. I am not, but one time I could. Um, so I feel in the intro to this video, I was telling my students how I feel it's very important for all instrumentalists to be singing, right? Because I feel it does a lot for developing the ear, for intonation, all that kind of stuff. So, Katie, what are your recommendations for an instrumentalist just starting to get into singing?
To start with solfege, really, to start with solfege,
Okay.
to have that um, sort of technical reference point. So, the one thing that I find when I'm working with quote unquote beginning singers is that you get in your own way and in judging yourself. If you start with solfege, it becomes a much more technical thing. And I think instrumentalists can relate to that a little bit more. So if you're looking at it in a more technical way, it can kind of get you out of your own head and out of judging yourself because you're singing the syllables, you're not, singing. Um, and to hum to yourself. I think starting with solfege and to hum to yourself as much as possible would be the way to start singing as for an instrumentalist.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some common mistakes you see when you're talking with high school students? When you're hearing high school kids sing, what are some of the common mistakes that you hear and would like to them to change?
So when I heard you were going to ask me this question, I knew exactly what I was going to say because it is one of my biggest things, and it is when singers come to me wanting to sound like someone else,
Mm,
wanting to have the voice that someone else has, wanting to, sound like someone else and trying to imitate that voice, and not embracing the instrument that they have. And it doesn't mean that they can't sing in a particular style. Um, Really, really good, expressive, released singing that you really, really relate to, singing that an audience would really, really relate to, comes from somebody who has really embraced what they have. So the biggest mistake I see in singers is trying to imitate someone else's voice. So
Yeah,
stop
that
it.
that's big. And I hear that. In particular, I always get scared. Like again, I'm no singing expert,
Mhm.
but I do know that there's some famous singers out there that are often imitated, who the way they sing did or does damage to their voice. And
Mhm.
like I hear younger people trying to imitate that, and I just go, "Oh, you're doing it,
Mhm.
but not for long."
Yeah. So I know who you're talking about. We're talking about Adele and Megan Trainor, and yeah, we could go into, there's also a genetic predisposition to vocal hemorrhaging. I could go on at length, but the there's also a genetic predisposition to vocal hemorrhage. But what you want is efficient singing that embraces your own unique voice. The style, whatever style you're singing, be it jazz, even belting, is laid on top of a released voice that is your own and an easy production for the instrument that you have.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice, and again, that lays so well over to instrumentalists. A saxophone player trying to imitate the gliss of a trombone is going to have a real
Right.
hard time.
Mm-hmm.
So first working on what your instrument can do, and then maybe
Mm-hmm.
seeing, you know, what you can adapt from others. That I love that. Um, what advice do you have for students who are currently singing in choir? So, like for kids
Is
who are doing choir singing.
really just keep doing it and listen to the people around you. So, the coolest thing that singing in choirs does is it when you are singing in a choir, your brain is actively producing oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. So, you will always, for the rest of your life, feel incredibly close to the people that you're singing in choir with. And I will promise you that. Like, even if you lose touch, even if you, goodness forbid, never speak to them again, you will remember them for the rest of your life. So keep singing in choirs. You will never feel alone if you're singing in choir.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that I'm a little envious of Europe for,
Mm-hmm.
because there's such a bigger culture of singing and continued singing. If you look at um, the professional soccer games, like the English
Mm-hmm.
professional soccer games, where the whole audience is chanting a song, singing a song together, and it's not being prompted by a
Mm-hmm.
loudspeaker. It's just one loudmouth
Right.
started singing it. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And it's so I did a little eye roll there when you started. So in the US, we have this, I don't know, it's a thing that we do where we sort of put value on arts that if it's not making money, like if you're not Beyonce, don't sing.
Mm,
And singing is a human condition. It's a necessity. People tell me, "Oh, I don't sing," and I'm like, I guarantee that you do. You sing in the shower, you sing in your car,
absolutely.
you do. So I think as Americans, we really need to get out of our own way and get out of this idea that if it's not Beyonce, don't do it. Because her albums are auto-tuned. Everyone runs uh, auto-tune now. It's like industry
Yeah,
standard. It's even if you don't need it, it's run through. It's called Melodyne is the one that they usually use, and it's part of post-production.
yeah,
Everything
yeah.
is auto-tuned.
I heard an interview with Michael Bublé when he was even admitting to auto tuning his records.
Yeah,
And
it's
I've heard live performances. He obviously doesn't have to.
No, yeah, they don't. But it's part of the post production in Pro Tools and whatever DAW they're using, DAW, digital audio workstation. Um, so whatever they're recording in, part of the post production is to run things through Melodyne, which is the major autotune program. So. Mm-hmm.
All right. So our students are getting ready to do, in theory, assuming we get out of this quarantine, some of our students are getting ready to do our spring musical, which is Mary Poppins this year. What advice can you give to those poor theater students who are stuck at home and not able to rehearse right now?
Read the books.
Oh.
If you have not read those books, you do not know Mary Poppins. There is so much more in the books. And if you've seen both of the movies, there's some explanations in the books that will kind of illuminate some of the things that have happened in the movies. I know I got a joke watching the second movie and I guffawed in the theater and everyone looked at me like, "Are you crazy?" I was like, "No, that's from the book." Like, but I will warn you that there is, well, I think you guys are in high school, you'll get it when you're older. I think it's chapter 9 of the first book. I was listening to it on an audiobook. I had to pull over because I was just weeping. And it is John and Barbara's chapter. So in the books, there's actually 4 children and then eventually 5. So there's twins, baby twins. And this chapter talks about how the babies can talk to the wind and talk to the sunlight, and they hear this voice of the earth and the pulse of life. But as soon as their first teeth comes in, it's gone. And they might hear it, but they'll never be able to understand it again. And just, the thought that as we grow up, we lose that connection to wonderment and magic, I think really exemplifies Mary Poppins for me. So read the books. You will understand her and understand that magic a lot more, because it's a lot deeper. It's stated in one of the books, the first or second book, that Mary Poppins watched as this world was created.
Oh,
so
wow.
She's a lot bigger, deeper character than was presented in the Disney movies.
Yeah, I had a conversation with my wife's mother about this before the more recent movie came out. I've never read the books, and neither had she, but we were discussing how you don't remember it as clearly in the first movie, but there's a darkness there. There's an underlying darkness right from the beginning. And yeah, that might be on my sit at home to-do list.
So she's much more severe and stern in the books. And there is reason for that, but it's not obvious.
Okay. All right. So what about more mechanically, what should the students be doing getting ready for, well, even if they're not getting ready for our show, but for any show, getting ready to do a Broadway style musical in the spring here? What would you recommend to the kids be doing at home?
So my number one is come to the first rehearsal memorized, if at all possible. I know that sounds crazy, but the sooner you are off book, the sooner you can actually play. The sooner you can actually sit in your character and create this person that your audience is going to relate to, because that's the magic of theater. And the sooner that you get off that book is the sooner the better, because you can live in it longer. If you come to the rehearsal with a book in your hand, you're in the book. You're not experiencing where you are. So get off the book so that from day one in rehearsal, you're having that real experience of that character and working with your castmates. That is absolutely number one. Any well, particularly in opera, you are expected to be memorized by the first rehearsal. You are, most of the time, in larger companies, you're expected not only to be memorized, but have performed the role before, with a coach or with a smaller company. But even in musical theater, when you've got a month or even 2 months to rehearse, you're expected to be at rehearsal memorized. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
Love it. Come into rehearsal prepared.
Yeah.
Every
Mm-hmm.
teacher's dream.
See, that's, it's not even about like do your work, and it's not even about that. It's about, you know, get that book out of your way so that you can have that experience. You know, I don't know how else do I put it. It's you will have a longer time to live in that character if you're off book sooner. Because if you're not off book, you're in the book.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you're focused on the mechanics and not the art.
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah, love it. All right. So, any last advice for our singers or people thinking about being singers or anything like that?
Oh my gosh, I could go on and on and on. Um, just sing, just sing. Um, I gave a TED talk many years ago under an old stage name. I was doing a lot of cabaret style performances. So in this TED talk, I talked about the necessity of singing, how it is a human necessity, and it is. It's a human superpower. The things that it can do for your brain and your ability to communicate, and just the bonding aspect of creating music together. The music says, or singing says, all of the things that you can't find the words to express. It is such a more important thing than we sort of value it as. It's don't judge yourself, suspend judgment, and sing.
Love it. Love it. So, Katie, how if my students have any questions for you or they want to follow you and see some of your performances or anything like that, how can they reach you?
Sure. Right now, I'm very into Instagram. So my Instagram handle is Kate Laurie's Voice, all one word. Um, and that's kind of where I'm reachable most. I have my Gmail address also is Kate Laurie Soprano at Gmail. So please feel free to email me any questions. I will go on at length on, vocal health, vocal, hemorrhaging. I'll talk about, belting. If you want to talk about belting safely, I will be very, very glad to talk about that. Um, and really any questions at all. I'm a giant nerd.
Love it.
Far too educated.
Love it. All right. Well, it was great catching up to you with you. It's been like 10 years now.
No.
So thank you for taking some time and chatting with us.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for asking me.
Well, hello. A bit stuck inside, are we? Well, my good friend Caruso and I have a bit of advice for you. You must remember that anything can happen if you let it.